Hey guys, this is Gwydion, and tonight I'm going to do hopefully a relatively short video showing you just a bit about Rangers of Shadow Deep, which is a tabletop adventure game by Joseph A. McCullough. Some of you might know that name. He's the creator of Frostgrave and Ghost Archipelago. And Frostgrave I've heard a fair bit about. I've never played it, but I came across Rangers of Shadow Deep, which uses tabletop miniatures, uses rulers and some basic materials, but allows you to play solo and cooperative at the tabletop. So it was pretty intriguing to me. I downloaded the rule set from drivethrurpg for $20. Actually, I ended up getting it when it was on a deep discount. I forget when that was, but I think I got it for $4 or $5. Really enjoyed the rule set. There's a deluxe edition out now, which you can see here on my screen. It's about the same price, so if you do support the author, which I encourage you to do, I would suggest maybe getting the deluxe edition. But I've been able to convert Rangers of Shadow Deep and the first couple of missions into Fantasy Grounds with the permission of Joseph McCullough. So thank you so much to him for allowing me to do that. But again, please support the author. You can buy the standard edition here, but you might want to go directly to the deluxe edition, which is right here for $20. Just some updated rules and artwork as I understand it. But again, consider going out there and supporting him. So first things first, there is a forum post that I made today, January 19th, 2020. And I went ahead and uploaded all the information you need and the modules and extensions you need for the game. So I'm not going to walk through all of that. I explain it. I'll put a link to this post in my video here on YouTube so that you can find this. But basically, you'll have some Dropbox files of the game mod, some extensions. You'll have to download the rule set, and all I did was take more core and updated it only so that I could put the Rangers of Shadow Deep image on the character sheet. Probably not necessary, but yeah, I thought I'd do that. It adds a nice little touch. Some of the extensions I use are the card deck extension and also the Muse extension for the map settings, which allows you to kind of change the distance on the maps from 5 feet standard to inches. So that's kind of a nice touch. So anyway, you can see that here. So I'm going to turn off that. Give me 1 second. And let's go into Rangers of Shadow Deep. So, and I'm fighting a cold, so if I cough once or twice, it's been fighting this for a week or two now, so I apologize. I'll try not to cough on stream. Okay, so this is the background extension from Thank You for GM Wintermute. This is really easy and slick, but this is kind of the cover art, which is pretty nice to have. So hopefully you have loaded up all of the appropriate extension modules, rule set, and your screen looks relatively similar to mine. If you go into your library and open the adventure, I have Rangers of Shadow Deep, kind of the core rule set under adventure when it loads. And then each mission, right now I've only done the first mission and the first scenario, but I'll do the ones that I have permission to release, which are the first 2 missions, and I believe it covers 4 scenarios. And it's in the core rulebook if you end up getting the core rulebook. It has a number of adventures already loaded. So let me open the reference manual. So thanks Celestian for the author extension that allowed me to do this. All right, so obviously you start with your cover credits. Excuse me. Thanks to Joseph McCullough. Again, link to DriveThru, me, Gwydion. You can find me on the Fantasy Grounds forums if you have any questions about this, but definitely would encourage you to support him. There's some basic information on the gameplay and notes. Instead of, again, trying to do a whole how-to document, I did create some FG note sections throughout the entire rulebook that hopefully will help. And now that I'm creating this video, I'll go ahead and load the link in here. So the character sheets, Rangers of Shadow Deep includes the core ranger, so you're the protagonist. And if you play solo, you get a number of ranger companions. If you play with multiple players, the way it scales is it limits the number of companions you have, which I think is a pretty cool function. So you can have sometimes 2, 3, 4 or more companion, which is pretty neat. But I've loaded them all. If you click up here on characters, and if you loaded everything properly and you click import character, you're going to see all of the pre-gens. So these happen to be, excuse me, all of the companions, and then the ranger itself is here. So just click on the plus sign. I think I did that. Let's go back. Yep, there he is. Click on your ranger. So I'm going to pull him over here for a minute and leave that up for now. Yeah, let's leave that up for now. So let's see. I have tried to automate functionality. So there's a number of modifiers, effects. And so if you go to the top right of your screen, and if you've loaded again both modules, if you click on mod, just as a reminder, once you open this, you're going to see a ton of different modifiers. The only reason I like to do this, I know you can just click on +5 or what have you to simulate these, but as an example, let's just say I want to use Burning Mark, +5 magic shooting attack. If I hit this, you'll see there's +5 in my modifier. Now when I roll, let me clear out this chat to make it easier to see. But now when I roll, let's say I roll a d20. So now it shows the +5, but it actually expresses in the chat window what it was from. So I kind of like that. So you might not need all of these, but you have them in case you do. Effects the same. So again, take a look. I have a lot of effects from, and again, as you all know in Morecore, these are just notes, but at least it gives you an indication of what you have equipped. And some of them last for a round. If they were supposed to last a round, I tried to put the actual time frame, and some of them are, if they don't have a specific time frame, I just have a 0. Okay, keep rolling here. Forward, I'm going to skip past a lot of this intro because I want to get into a little bit of the gameplay with you. So miniatures, so you'll see here, FG nodes. So we use tokens, obviously, and I do have a couple of specific tokens. So something once you get into the missions, which I'm not going to go through tonight, but if you click on tokens, you should see this question mark and this treasure that I loaded in. So these are 2 specific to Rangers of Shadow Deep that you should see when you load the module. Playing cards. So a lot of the scenarios in this book, when you play, will have an event table, and you can only usually get an event once. And so basically the way the game works when you play on the tabletop is you use a deck of cards to simulate it. I'm going to show you quickly. So I happen to I have 2 books open, or modules. So the Rangers of Shadow Deep mission, here's the event table. So it's kind of cool. You'll see all of the different events here, and you'll see that I have this cards and auto selected. So if I roll, so you see how I have, I think there's 18. Yeah, there's 18 possibilities here. So if I roll, I've got zombies that come out and I have to place on the table. But now you'll see that's not there anymore. So these 4 zombies are now gone. So it simulates drawing from a deck of cards and not replacing it. And if I want to reset that table, I right-click, hit reset all cards, and now it's back to normal. It's a cool functionality. It's an extension that Trenlo made called the basic card deck extension. Very cool. All right, let's keep rolling on the Ranger sheet. So Ranger sheet. So again, I've created pre-gens for all of these. And you see this one here. I'll briefly go through this. You get build points as a Ranger that I'll go through with you. See this little icon here is why I updated Morecore, just to put this into the character sheet. I just thought it was neat. Health, armor, wounds. I apparently have wounds there accidentally, but it should be 0. Attributes. And a lot of these attributes and skills, you click on this, you'll see a fight stat and current modifier, and these are all rollable, and you'll be able to update these. I've already loaded the core stats that a Ranger gets that you'll see, and then skills. you'll notice that you can spend points, build points towards skills. I'm not going to create a character tonight. I'll probably do that separately. But the cool thing is you can put the points that you assign in here. The reason some of these have 2 is certain magic items. If I roll over this here, there's a magic item bonus. So some of these can be modified by magic items. Heroic abilities, I have some drag and drop, some magic items, and there's also some spell points. I also put in onto the ranger sheet. I didn't put the inventory on this one. Might be something I have to update later. But for all the companions, and I think I did that because you actually get to pick your starting equipment for a ranger. So we'll go through that briefly. All right, so went through this, creating a ranger. So again, you have all different ways to create a ranger. So you can do a stealth, you can do more of a thief, you can do somebody that's really good with a bow, charismatic leader. So there's a lot of customization available. So once you open the ranger, let's just briefly go through how to create a ranger. So now that you've kind of got some basic ideas, you get 10 build points, which I put up here into hero points. So if you double click this, you can decrement it down just to keep track of how you're spending your build points. But you can spend your build points to increase stats, buy abilities, own skills, and recruit companions. So you can see here, I tried to make some notes as to how I used certain aspects of the character sheet. So you keep track of that. Explain stats. So again, I'm not going to read through all this. It's a little different than, say, D&D and other role-playing games. Just a few different stats, but pretty similar. And you get a basic stat line. So you can see that move is 6. And if you look up here, I have move indicated as 6. That's 6 inches, plus 2 to fight. So I've loaded the ranger with all the basic stats. Okay, and now you can choose up to 3 of your build points. You can use anywhere from 0 to 3 of your build points to increase stats. So again, I'll let you kind of read that, and I'll probably build a character next video. But I've included, like I said, move, armor, health, fight, shoot, and will, and I try to explain a little bit of the modifiers. All right, moving on, heroic abilities and spells. So again, you can spend up to 5 build points purchasing heroic abilities and spells. And it's important to know that typically if you buy a spell, you're only able to use it once per, it's either scenario or mission. I actually forget if it's scenario or mission, but you use it one time. So I do have, you do have the ability to track in more core of the spells and your utilization. But so you can buy up to 5 heroic abilities and or spells. And all heroic abilities and spells are included in the abilities icon in FG. So let me hide this for a second. And then I'm going to go to, where is it? Items, roles. And the abilities icon. I feel like I screwed that up for you guys already. Let's see. Let's look at this for a second. Oh, I just didn't have it turned on. So there's abilities. I just had to click on it. Okay, here we go. So I do have these categorized. So when you first open it, you'll see all. But I have a heroic abilities list, which has all of them from the core rule set, and a spell list. Not a ton of spells. So if we go to the heroic abilities and let's just click on, say, distraction, it'll have the description. You can drag and drop it onto the character sheet. I have a heroic abilities section to do that. And in some cases, let's see. If there's a spell, sometimes I'll have an actual role in here that you can use. So in our case, we could literally open our character sheet. And if I wanted to roll this, and I can drag and drop it right onto my character sheet. Pretty cool. And so again, whenever possible, I've included roles, like if there's a will roll or healing modifiers, again, I've talked about that, and effects. All right, let's move on from here to keep this going. So this also talks briefly about all of the different heroic abilities. So even though I have them in the abilities tab, if you want to just scroll through them and understand what you can get, it's right there. spell list the same. I think there's not many. Hide this again. There's not many, but like heal is a good example. I have a rule for heal right here. I've already created the rule, and you'll be able to automate and use that. All right. Skills. So again, you can use build points, up to 5 build points on skills. Every time you use 1 build point, you may improve 8 skills plus 1. No, you can't do 1 skill plus 8. So the skills are the first tab, and I kind of explain again why I have 2 boxes, but pretty easy stuff. But you can kind of look at the skills. So here, all the acrobatics, leadership, it kind of explains all the skills. You can scroll through them. Pretty basic things. But there are some things like strength, which is a little bit unique. You don't always use your, you don't roll with a strength ability score. You actually have to take that as a skill. All right, recruitment points. So this is where it's, again, it kind of scales up and down, but you can spend up to 3 build points to increase your base recruitment points, but you start with 100, and there's other modifiers that I'll let you read through. But all of the pre-gens are loaded again. So if let's just pick the archer. I'll hit the plus sign. So now the archer is in here. And what I tried to do here is show the number of recruitment points, because each one costs a certain amount of points, and you can track the different points. So actually the companions come later, but just as an example, so again, I have their based attributes. If they have any skills or pluses to skills, I've included them. If you look in inventory, each of these has specific inventory amounts. I've coded all of the weights to 1 because you have a certain number of items you can carry, and that's how encumbrance is tracked. So everything has a 1. And you'll have in the notes a little bit more about the archer. And some cases they have the choice of weapons, so I included that here as a note too. All right, keep going. Weapons, armor, and equipment. So, excuse me, you get some base items. And again, I explain a little bit about the tracking. I have some modifiers for each weapon, so you can look in the modifier button. You might not need them, but they're there if you need them, if you want to use them. Here's the basic equipment list. In addition to reading through the equipment here, if you click on items, you drop down to equipment, and you can sort for all of the different equipment items. Here's a bow. Explains a little bit more about them. I didn't really have an ID that I named for these, and I'm not going to explain a lot about combat because you're going to have to learn how to play this game, and I will do a character creation, maybe a playthrough, but for now I just want to show you kind of how the rule set is incorporated into Fantasy Grounds. All right, basic rules, setting up the table. Most of them are like 2x5 by 2x5. The first scenario is 3x3, but I'm going to split each of these up into its own module. And it's interesting because there's not pre-selected maps. They just kind of describe what the map should look like. But I ended up, as you'll see, I'll show you briefly, when I loaded the module, I created my own map using Arc and Forge, and I can distribute that freely, which is pretty cool. Explains the turn. So there's different phases. So this kind of describes how to run a turn in Ranger of Shadow Deep. You have a Ranger phase, a creature, companion, and an event phase. It's pretty straightforward, but all of these rules, let's see, maps this over here. So here are all the rules about activation, when you activate your companions, how that works, movement. So it's relatively rules light. You have obstructions, rough terrain, difficult terrain if some of you are 5e players. How to move into combat. Talks about whenever you move within 1 inch of an enemy figure, the enemy typically will force combat. Let's see, jumping rules, falling and what happens, certain amount of damage. You can make acrobatics rolls, skill and stat rolls. So it kind of explains how that works. Swimming. So it's more challenging to swim in armor, and you have modifiers. I don't remember if I did this, but I think I might have put Maybe I didn't put swimming modifiers in. I figured you could do that. Easy enough. Combat's kind of unique. So it's kind of interesting. Basically, whenever you fight, whenever somebody engages someone else, like if I begin fighting with a zombie, then I roll a fight roll and he rolls a fight roll, and we both have an opportunity on that turn to hurt each other. So you roll your fight scores. Let's just say it's hand to hand, makes it easy. And in this case, down here, the ranger rolls a 16 and adds his fight stat, so he's got a score of 20. The gnoll rolls an 8, which gives it a score of 10 because it has a +2. So what you do is you compare those two, and since the ranger's score is higher, then he wins the fight. What makes this a little more unique than other games is you then take the fact that your score was a 20, so you just determine, you look at the fight scores, and you know you won. But now you take your total combat score and subtract the gnoll's armor to get your damage. So that is a little bit unique. So maybe read through that a couple times, and I'll show you on another video how that works. So it does kind of go through a very detailed discussion on combat, multiple combats. It was a little bit challenging. There were images in the basic rule set, but I just kind of showed you. You get the idea. It's basically like flanking in 5e or other D&D games you've played or other role-playing games. Critical hits, whenever you roll a natural 20, you score a critical hit, and all that means is it hits no matter what, and it does +5 damage. And evil creatures don't ever score critical hits. Shooting, so there's a different, it's not dexterity, there's actually a shoot score. So relatively similar to fighting, except you can't be hit back, of course. There's modifiers for shooting. This is kind of interesting, obviously, if somebody's in the way or in between you, it can block your view. So it gives a kind of a +1 a penalty. If there is intervening terrain, it's obviously a little bit harder to hit. So these pluses, it's a little confusing, but the pluses should be to the basically, I guess, the defense of the person that's being targeted. You also have a hurried shot, so as a shooter, if you've already moved first, you're kind of out of breath, so you take just a little bit of a penalty, or rather the person that's trying to avoid you gets a little bonus. Damage, talks about damage. Poison, there is such thing as poison and disease. I won't go through all these right now, but they have effects on multiple scenarios. If you're in a multiple scenario, hunger and thirst can play a part. Using heroic abilities and spells, it kind of talks about that, and usually you can use them once per scenario, I believe. So that's something to keep in mind, that when you acquire these, you can only use them once. Here it shows right here, per scenario. So it replenishes the next scenario. Casting spells, again, usually spells actually, I think, do take an action. Let's see, but heroic abilities do not. So treasure tokens, sometimes in the scenarios you'll have treasure, and this kind of explains evil creatures and kind of a little bit of their AI. Relatively basic, lets you go through that, but some kind of how they will react to you. Scenarios, talks about scenarios. And so here is some of the discussion around companions. So in this case, this goes through kind of how many recruitment points you have. Read through this. So you can have up to 7 companions as one player. So that makes it cool. It allows you to create more of a party, and the more people you have, the less companions, the more players you have with you. It's kind of neat, and you can replenish these between at least missions. Scenario, I don't think it, like if you're in the same mission, but it's multiple scenarios, I don't think you can swap out, but you can swap companions between missions. I love this picture. This goes through all the companions, and again, although I already showed you I have all these characters, but if you want to flip through and understand how expensive they are, so again, this one is 20 recruitment points, Barbarians 35, but it also has some pluses, and it comes with hand weapons, +5 strength, And all of these are already preloaded in the character sheet. It's cool. Campaign, it talks a little bit about the campaign, and you do have to check for injury and death, which is cool. So at the end, if you did drop to 0 health, then you roll on a survival table. So it's possible that you wouldn't completely die, but you might be wounded and have some negatives on your next mission. Permanent injuries, that's cool. You can have some lost toes, lost fingers, and give you negatives going forward on your missions, which is kind of neat. Experience and levels. The basic experience points, but each scenario will tell you how much you get, and it's kind of cool. You actually, depending on skill rolls and things of that nature, you can increase your experience points, which is I thought was pretty cool. So your companions can progress too. Treasure, again, there's treasure that you can find, golden jewels, herbs and potions. So there is a table for herbs and potions. If you find one, you typically roll on this table. You'll see that I have these all linked, as in my items. I have the herbs and potions. So these are all listed. See information on each. And then again, some of these, you'll also see weapons, armors, and magic items. So same thing, I have tables for those, or I should say I have items for each of these. And then where possible, I've linked to an actual magic item, or a tracker, I should say, a roll. So take a look in the abilities section, or no, not in the abilities, I'm sorry, in the roles section. And if you look at magic items effects, if there's any effect, you might see them here, but I also tried to put trackers. So you can drag these onto your character sheet, and it already has the number of times you can use these items, which each one is different. I think a lot of them are just one use. All right. Reorganize Companions talks about the rules about reorganizing. Bestiary. So again, all of these are listed as NPCs. I have all of them listed. They're going to have a basic letter token. Where possible, I've included anything special they have. Combat tracker roles, if I had them, attributes, and notes on the NPC. All right, so that's this. So I'm going to briefly explain the scenario. So here's the first scenario. Okay, and I have a little bit of information. Okay, so there's a cover. Sorry. Credits. So here's a map I made. So everything is copyright Joseph McCullough except for the map, which is Arkenforge, and the cities and town map pack. Check out Arkenforge. It was really easy to create this map, which is pretty cool because I can release it for free, which is pretty neat. So you have to have the Rangers of Shadowdeep base module open, which we already explained. And now the missions are pretty straightforward. Kind of go through basic setup, tells you which NPCs you might need. So again, if you open your NPCs, you're going to find all of these. Zombies, giant rats. I don't know if I put in, there's a giant rat, the survivors. Those are just people. So I probably need to add that in later. Don't think I remembered to do that. All right. So, and it's basically, it tells you, I'll show you how to run a game, but let's see, do I have, hope I did this right. Okay, here we go. So this explains 3x3 table. It explains how to set up your map. So you're going to have to read through this, and it tells you exactly how you can set it up. And I added the muse extension so that I could set the grid to, since everything is by inches, I set it up so that you can measure by inches. So it kind of tells you all about the rules. You have tables that you can use, what outcomes, what experience you get. So all of that is in here. And if you click on, let me go to the, if you click on the deserted village, So here's my map, pretty cool. And if I unhide this quickly, you can see these are all inches. So if I go right click, everything's right click. If I do the pointer, you can see it's about 6 inches to that. Everything, all the buildings are supposed to be 6 inches away if you look at it. So I've done that work for you, but you have to put in where you want the monsters, the zombies, and rats, etc. So each scenario can be a little bit different. I included these colored because this is where all of you, your rangers and your companions would start. So that's it, just for the setup and a basic explanation. Sorry this went a little bit long, but hopefully it gives you a good feel for how you can at least get Rangers of Shadow Deep set up. And next time, maybe I'll do a character build, and hopefully I can even do a walkthrough of a game. Hope this was helpful. I hope you guys download this. If you do, shoot me a note. Let me know you're playing it. And until next time, I hope to see you all on the Fantasy Grounds forums.